Continue our coverage of former President Jacob Zuma's impending imprisonment. He's filed an urgent application for his 15-month prison sentence to be revoked, citing poor health and old age. But is this at all likely to succeed? Legal Analyst Adv Sipho Mantula and Political Analyst Dr. Van Heerden join me now to help unpack this issue. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you both. Advocate, I will start with you. Your thoughts on that question that we posed in the intro. Will he succeed? Advocate Mantula, can you hear me?
Hugo, one tested process. I can hear you very well.
Okay, please go ahead and respond.
Hugo, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir.
Thank you very much, Hugo, and morning to the viewers, Hugo.
Okay, we seem to be struggling there. Dr. Van Heerden, I trust you can hear me.
I can indeed.
Now, in an article that you wrote in the Daily Maverick, almost 2 months to the day, you said he won't spend a single day in jail. Your thoughts? Do you still insist?
Well, I thought that, like many others, that there was going to be a suspended sentence. Of course, everyone was caught off guard, hence the cancellation of the National Executive Committee meeting of the ANC this weekend, where they all now going to Nkandla to try and to be seen to be managing this particular challenge. I do think that, I hear what the legal eagles are saying, but the truth of the matter, Hugo, is that if the application for rescission is available to anyone, not just to Jacob Zuma, but anyone, then I think we all know that this is yet another delaying tactic. Jacob Zuma and his legal teams over the years have been known to be experts in finding ways of delaying his day in court. So this is another delaying tactic. However, it is permitted. It is permitted by law, and that is why he is putting in this application, and cleverly has also decided at the same time to put in an application for stay with the Pietermaritzburg High Court to say to the South African Police Services and the law enforcement agencies, since my application has been given to the Constitutional Court for them to consider, will you also have a stay of application in terms of the arrest post-Sunday? So I think it's a very clever strategy, but it is simply a strategy of delaying. The inevitable is still going to hold, I think.
Now, in what was obviously a scathing judgment, the Constitutional Court noted that he'd been given ample opportunity to cooperate and participate. In fact, outgoing Chief Justice Mweng offered him an opportunity to decide his fate, so to speak, and he did not take up that offer.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Hugo. The truth of the matter is that people around Jacob Zuma now, family members and all these supporters, can't turn around and say that the former president has not been given a fair trial. The truth is that they had called him to participate and give his side of the story. He refused. Instead, opted to write a 21-page letter telling the Chief Justice how biased he thinks the process is, everyone is against him, etc., etc. Then, on a second occasion, they invited him again, as you say, to participate in saying, if we find you guilty, what would be an appropriate sentence? And again, he refused. So the question and the argument that says that he's being treated unfairly, he has no basis. The simple thing here is that because of the arrogance of former President Jacob Zuma, he decided to play chicken with the Constitutional Court. They called his bluff. He lost. Now it's not the time to be a crybaby.
Advocate Mantula, I believe we have you back online. Good to be speaking to you. Jacob Zuma finds himself in a bit of a mess, if you will, but all of this seems to be a situation that he's created himself. He was certainly, at some point, given a get-out-of-jail card free, so to speak.
Correctly, Hugo, and a morning once more to the viewers. I think I will agree with Oscar that even if we look at the opportunities that were given to the former president, he has missed that opportunity. Despite that, if you look at our law, the Rule 42, which is part of the uniform rules of the court, allow even for people to revoke, rescind, review. But looking at the time frame of this matter, it has even taken so long that for him to have replied to the court beyond 21-page letter to the Chief Justice, I think that was an error even from his side. And you will understand that this case, it is one of the extraordinary matters that even the justices, when they were dealing with it, they have raised it that this is a unique matter, and as well, it is eroding constitutional prescripts and as well as the rule of law. And look at the character of the former president. Yes, the issue of age, it was going to come if he was given opportunity or if he had taken that opportunity during mitigation process. And if one looks the issues that he will raise under Rule 42 and of the High Court, I don't think going to the High Court was even wise, rather than rely on the Constitutional Court. And that's where we are having now what we call the dicing of the Constitutional Court ruling, coupled with the political climate that we see now on our screens since Wednesday, and that it is again a threat to national security. And I think we have to go beyond the Constitution, go beyond the ruling, and look at the climate that this matter has created. And maybe another point, Hugo, finally, is the issue of the Commissions Act. When you look at the sanctions of the Commissions Act, it do allow them to subpoena, to go to the court, and if people saying that the minority judgment was raising the issue of why did you not explore the lower court, look at the time frame and the lifespan of the commission and the losses that we have faced in this country in terms of corruption.
Dr. Van Heerden, one thing that is clear that Justice Sisi Kampepe talked about when she handed down the judgment is the attitude of the former president. She says the judgment also called Zuma's behavior contemptuous, outlandish, and downright disobedient.
No, absolutely. Absolutely, Hugo. And that is why the acting Chief Justice and the majority ruling felt very strongly that a suspended sentence was not going to do the trick because of that very attitude that the former president displayed, in a way giving the Constitutional Court the middle finger on a number of occasions. And so they felt that, even if we wanted to afford the former president one last chance to make amends and to go to the Zondo Commission and to uphold the ruling of the court, they felt that his attitude up till this point suggests that it was going to be a waste of time, and that is why they came down so hard on the prison sentence of 15 months.
Advocate Mantula, when you read or listen to that judgment, there's the language that is used to describe the behavior or the person of the former president, Jacob Zuma, suggests that the judiciary or the Concourt in particular has a point to prove. In fact, they've actually said that they do not want to set precedents and that they would like to use the former president as an example.
Correct, Hugo, but you will remember that they have raised the issue. If you look at their beginning, they have used the quote of Nelson Mandela, raising the issue of the erosion of our constitutional democracy. But again, the issue that they use of setting an example with the former head of state, they've said that this sentence, it is not all about judiciary or about Jacob Zuma, but it is about his allegiance that he has already promised when he was the president as well. That if one can look at his character as a former head of state, it was never expected from him to be the one violating the contempt of court of the first case, by the way. And I think that's where, if that language was used, judges as well acknowledge that they are not holy cows. They have said that they are open for criticism. But what is critical for them, it is when the judiciary is being attacked openly and without following the due processes of the law. And one can see Sanity now prevailing from his legal team now engaging the processes beyond political statements and rhetoric. And I think that's where we should understand if we want to change our laws, we want to engage. We don't need to always go to the media cables or media lenses and engage at that level. And again, use political sympathy. Because judges have raised that we have looked at your political gain, that you are a public figure, and that's where it is critical for us to make sure that the number one citizen cannot violate the law. And I think that's where most of our viewers must find that both minority and the majority agreed on that sanction, but it was only on the question of whether punitive or coercive punishment.
Dr. van Heerden, ANC's top six have cancelled a meeting scheduled for this weekend and are going to engage Jacob Zuma. I would pay to be a fly on that wall. Your thoughts on what that means?
Everyone, even though there's a lot of people that might, hate Jacob Zuma or take issue with him, the truth of the matter is that he's a former president of the Republic of South Africa, a former president of the ANC, the ruling party. And I think that the top six and the NEC members that are making their way to KwaZulu-Natal is going there in the context of wanting to ensure that there isn't a further embarrassment for the organization, the ANC, but also in the person of Jacob Zuma. So I think that they are going to want to talk some reason to him, to the extent that the court has made a ruling. Of course, they will say that he is allowed to explore all possible avenues that is still open to him legally, but at the end of the day, the rule of law will have to be maintained, and that this gathering of people around Nkandla wanting to clearly defy the law is not helpful in the bigger scheme of things, and actually will be hurting the ANC in the end of the day.
Advocate Mantula, it's probable that former President Jacob Zuma may be incarcerated in the next few days. In your mind, what does that prison sentence look like? Is he going to be given preferential treatment if he is put away?
Hugo, it is quite difficult, but listening to the correctional services members during the week, they were raising that no one is above the law, no one will be given preferential treatment. But remember that on his papers, he has raised the issue of his health conditions, which is very critical. And even one looks at the severity of the crime. It is not a serious crime per se, and he will not be put into a serious A or B maximum prison. And if one looks at the period as well of correctional supervision, can be another option that can be looked into. And even his state of health, it is very critical. But like we are saying, exhausting this rescission application, again, with the crowd that is in Nkandla, makes things difficult as well for the state to can effect that order. But at the same time, remembering that this is one of the persons who has been seen as being attacked by judiciary, having been attacked by the state on these cases, because remember that there is another case coming forth. And that's where one has to look at where will be his vicinity when he's been arrested or when he's been jailed. And looking as well at the period that will it be 15 months, because we know very well he might serve almost 7 to 8 months in prison. But again, it will depend on how the government deal with this matter, because this is a high-profile matter and it is extraordinary.
Gentlemen, please stay with us. We will be coming right back to you after this. You're watching Newsfeed, the AM edition. Stay with us. I'm joined by Legal Analyst Advocate Sipho Mantula and Political Analyst Dr. Oscar van Heerden. And we continue our conversation around the Jacob Zuma saga as we continue to unpack this issue. Dr. van Heerden, is it a case of fight one, fight all when it comes to the judiciary? Obviously, former President Jacob Zuma's legal team has put in an application. will he be treated in the same way that he's likely to have been treated by the Concord? We certainly picked up from their language that at the very least they're extremely displeased with the behavior of the former president.
Look, I mean, I think that the court is very clear that first and foremost, we are all equal before the law. I think that principle has been established. Whether you're a former president or not, you are equal before the law. And hence the contempt of court and the actual sentencing. The second thing is that the acting Chief Justice Kampepe made it very clear that this is not about the individual. It's not about Jacob Zuma, actually. It is about protecting the judiciary and protecting the constitutional court and by implication all our courts, lower and high courts, that we cannot have a situation where someone decides to undermine the courts and to cast aspersions on the judiciary because they think that the courts are being biased against them. And that is why the judgment was so emphatic that the Constitution and the Constitutional Court must be protected. Because if we allow Jacob Zuma to get away with contempt of court and not listening and thinking that he's above the law, then it means every Dick, Tom and Harry can also do it. It's the same thing, Hugo, with what's going on at Nkandla, for example. The grouping of people are putting the law enforcement agencies and the South African police services in a situation that says that yet again, like in the case of Zuma, they cannot turn a blind eye. They will have to enforce the law. And that's why, and that's exactly what the MKVA and these individuals that have gone to Nkandla wants. They want a major showdown.
Advocate Mantula, over the last couple of months, the situation with Jacob Zuma and certainly his fight with the Concord has seemed to gather momentum. And the question I'd like to ask is, was he ill-advised by his legal team? Admittedly, he's had a number of teams that have fallen away or been fired. But did they ill-advise him?
You know, I would say it is too early to can say so because there are two processes. Having a legal representative and as a client, that mostly the legal representative take the brief from their client. But at some point, I think the legal team was supposed to take lead on the constitutional processes when there was the oral arguments in March. And that way we could have seen their weight and their muscle to can understand the challenge, which was all about the chairperson of the commission. Because remember that one of the bone issues, one of the core issues was all about recusal of the Deputy Chief Justice in the commission. And when you look at the lawyers as well, how they have looked at the processes, I think that's where they have missed it. And now, like I said earlier, sanity now prevails that they are back now into the court. And it might be too little, too late, because if you will understand, the Constitutional Court allows every party to come forward. Hence, there was that issue of giving the former president another right to reply to the order that was issued in the first case in December. And I think that's where they've missed that boat. And in some instances, one can say both politics and law, in some instances, they find themselves at the crossroads of how do we balance the legal interpretation vis-a-vis political posturing and political victimhood. Because remember that others are now playing a political victimhood syndrome. Others are playing a political victim villain that you have been vilified by the law. And that's where the issue of the role of the lawyers are critical in these matters of the Constitutional Court, not to even take them lightly, considering that the Commission of Inquiry, it was the same President Zuma who did set its terms of reference.
Dr. Van Heerden, when we talk about balancing, I'm sure the top six are keen to balance the potential instability that is being created by this situation. I mean, what we're monitoring, the things that we're seeing on the ground in Nkandla suggest that many of former President Jacob Zuma's supporters have said, we will fight tooth and nail, we will fight till the very end, that he is not taken into prison.
Yeah, so I think that there are certainly, it's unfortunate. I think, let me say that I think it's unfortunate that MKVA and these rogue elements that are gathering at Nkandla is really, putting forward arguments that is destructive, that is not helpful in terms of the South African project, to try and suggest that the courts are white courts and that they are anti-blacks, suggesting that, there is an element of a political ploy that is at play against Jacob Zuma. These are all very dangerous and very unfortunate sentiments, and completely untrue, of course. But they have to have some argument to try and justify why they feel they want to break the law by stopping the enforcement of the law. So I think that, in my opinion, Hugo, these guys want to have a showdown. They want to perpetuate the narrative of Zuma being a victim, and that everyone is hell-bent on seeing Jacob Zuma in prison, and that to embarrass him. And in fact, the truth of the matter is that President Jacob Zuma is where he is today because of himself. He willfully set out on this path, and that's now having to deal with the consequences. That is the truth of the matter. I would have thought that, people might disagree with me, Hugo. If you look at the storming of the Capitol in Washington, D.C. a few months ago, I think the way the Washington, D.C. law enforcement dealt with that situation, not actually playing to the right-wing elements of having an open confrontation and shooting and tear gas and all of that, instead opting to use CCTV and technology to ensure that they actually see who are the culprits and so forth. But the thing they did so wonderfully, I think, is that they took away what exactly those groups want, which was to have a showdown and a confrontation. And I think that there's lessons to be learned there. What is wrong with, for example, waiting for these groups to eventually go, because they won't be able to stay at Nkandla forever. They'll have to return to work and so forth. And they're saying to the president, when the time is right, we are going to come and fetch you. But if you think that we are just going to have this big showdown and so forth, because that is what the Carl Neels and the Kebbies want of this world, let's take that away from them. At the end of the day, whether Zuma goes to prison in a month's time or in 3 weeks' time, it's neither here nor there. The principle has been established. We are not above the law. He is not above the law. And a sentence has been issued. And I think that the law enforcement agencies should not want to have a showdown with these protesters and the likes.
Advocate Mantula, do you see a weakening of the stronghold of the ANC in KZN arising from the imprisonment of the former president?
Hugo, it is the political will of the African National Congress provincial leadership to rein its members and try to explain about this ruling and to explain the consequences that it will lead to the country. More so, South Africa, it is the model of constitutional democracy in the African continent. And even when you look at the pace and the rapacious mood of even firing of guns, that shows that there is a threat as well to the ordinary citizens and even to judiciary. When we know very well that judiciary, it is the pillar and it is a face of the state to can protect everyone, and that's where the ANC, it is very important for them to work around how do they find one another, even if it is quite difficult. And if you look at the ANC delegation that they have sent, one can see already that they have already sent security cluster there, because that's where they will have to try to explain security risk of this issue of defying the court order, and as well of the numbers that are out there when actually we have level 4 regulations. And at the same time, it will send a wrong precedent to many people who want to have political gatherings, and that will send, like I said, a wrong precedent to the nation.
Gentlemen, I thank you very much for your time. Legal Analyst Advocate Sipho Mantula and Political Analyst Dr. Oscar van Heerden, giving us their thoughts around the situation in which former President Jacob Zuma finds himself in, and certainly potential instability, particularly in the KZN area from what we can see.